Right now, somewhere on the African savanna, an elephant is standing beside the bones of someone it once knew, and it will not leave. Not because it is lost, not because it is afraid. It is doing what scientists now call a funerary ritual. They touch the remains with their trunks. They smell each bone. They stand still for hours, sometimes for days. Something inside the largest brain of any land animal on Earth is processing what we call loss. The story of the African elephant is a story of memory, language, and ceremony, and science has only just begun to read it. The African elephant is the largest land animal alive, and it is actually two distinct species the world long mistook for one. The African bush elephant roams open savannas from Kenya to Zimbabwe, while the African forest elephant disappears into the deep Congo Basin rainforests. A mature bull weighs up to 7 tons and stands 4 meters at the shoulder, its ears spread as wide as the map of Africa itself. Those vast ears are dense with blood vessels. Each slow fan draws heat from the body, a living radiator under the African sun. The trunk holds more than 100,000 individual muscles, not a single bone among them, yet it can lift a log weighing 300 kilograms. The same trunk can pinch a single berry from the ground, 2 muscular fingertips working with surprising delicacy. Each day, an adult elephant consumes up to 300 kilograms of vegetation and drinks up to 100 liters of water. To find enough of both, a herd may travel up to 50 kilometers. Because they eat so much and travel so far, African elephants have unintentionally engineered entire ecosystems around themselves. Seeds carried in elephant dung germinate up to 20 kilometers from the parent tree. Some species cannot sprout at all without passing through an elephant's gut. In dry season, elephants dig wells in the bed of dried rivers, and those wells sustain zebras, hyenas, lions, and everything else living nearby. Ecologists call them ecosystem engineers. Remove the elephant, and the entire African landscape transforms into something unrecognizable. Elephants live in family groups, led by the oldest female, the matriarch, the living archive of everything the herd needs to survive. Adult bulls live alone or in small bachelor groups, returning to female herds only in the season of mating. Elephant gestation lasts 22 months, nearly 2 full years, and a calf stands within hours of birth, ready to move with the herd. A calf is raised by the whole herd. Not only its mother and younger females learn mothering by watching, then slowly imitating. In the wild, elephants live 60 to 70 years, and across that lifetime, they replace their teeth 6 times. When the last set of teeth wears down and no new set follows, the old elephant can no longer chew and quietly declines. This means an elephant's lifespan is ultimately determined not by its heart, not by its lungs, but by its very last molars. But across those 60 to 70 years, the most important thing an elephant accumulates is not muscle, not fat, it is memory. In the 1980s, researcher Cynthia Moss began tracking individual elephants at Amboseli in Kenya, and what she recorded changed everything. She found that elephant families recognized each other after years of separation, even after a decade of no contact. When long-separated herds meet, elephants trumpet, spread their ears, secrete fluid from their temporal glands, and press trunks together in visible excitement. This is not random reflex, it is individual recognition, the way we recognize an old friend's face across a crowded room after years apart. In 2011, researcher Karen McComb at the University of Sussex played back the recorded calls of elephants that had died years earlier. When they heard the call of their dead emerge from a hidden speaker in the bush, the living elephants froze, raised their ears, and walked toward it. When they heard a dead stranger's call, they did not react the same way. Only the voices of those they had known produced that response. This proved that elephants retain acoustic memories of specific individuals for years, even after those individuals are gone. Not only voices, elephants remember smells, roots, and the location of water sources from droughts that occurred decades earlier. In severe drought years, herds with older matriarchs survive at significantly higher rates than herds led by younger females. Because older matriarchs remember the last drought, they remember exactly where water still existed when everything else ran dry. The memory of one old matriarch is the most valuable survival resource the entire herd carries through extreme years. But elephant memory does not stop at geography. It extends to something far harder to believe. Elephants recognize the remains of lost family members years after death, even when only scattered bones remain in the dry grass. Moss's experiments showed elephants responded more strongly to the skull of their own mother or offspring than to the skull of an unfamiliar elephant. Researchers placed 3 skulls before a herd, one from a dead matriarch, one from a human, one from a buffalo. Elephants spent far more time at the elephant skull, touching it repeatedly and guiding their calves forward to touch it too. This was the first evidence that elephants can distinguish the remains of their own species from the remains of any other. And this was only the beginning of the puzzle. The deeper, stranger part lay in how elephants communicate with each other. Elephants communicate not only in sounds we can hear, but in a language entirely invisible to the human ear. In 1984, researcher Katie Payne was standing beside the elephant enclosure at Portland Zoo when she felt a strange vibration in her chest. Payne was a musicologist. She recognized it instantly as infrasound, vibrations below the threshold of human hearing, below 20 hertz. She returned with specialized recording equipment and found that elephants were holding constant conversations that no human ear could detect. Elephant infrasound travels up to 10 kilometers through the air and even further when transmitted through the ground itself. And here is where things become truly extraordinary. Elephants, here with their feet. Elephant feet contain specialized fatty tissue, a cushioned pad that detects ground vibrations and transmits them up through the jaw directly to the inner ear. This means when one elephant calls in infrasound, it is simultaneously speaking through the air and tapping Morse code through the earth. And an elephant 10 kilometers away can receive both signals simultaneously, cross-referencing air and ground to confirm the message. Joyce Poole's research at Amboseli identified at least 35 distinct elephant call types, each carrying a specific meaning within the herd. There are distinct calls for mustering the herd, for warning of specific dangers, for mother-to-calf contact, and for long-distance individual recognition. When elephants warn of a specific threat, hunters, for example, the call differs entirely from the call they use for lions. Researchers played back lion warning calls. The herd bunched together and turned to face the direction of the sound. When they played back the human warning call, the herd fled in the opposite direction and fell entirely silent. Elephants, but the real question is this: where does that knowledge come from? And how does it travel from one elephant to another? The answer lies in social structure, where knowledge passes from old matriarch to younger generations through years of observation and imitation. This is culture, in the biological sense of the word learned behavior, transmitted within a social group across generations, carried not in genes, but in minds. But seismic language is not only for warnings, it is used in the most emotionally charged moments of an elephant's life. When a calf is born, the herd produces a simultaneous infrasound chorus, and research suggests distant herds can sense the event through the ground. Similarly, when a herd member dies, there is evidence that the low-frequency mourning calls may be sensed by other herds across great distances. Elephants do not simply inhabit their own sensory world, they are constantly listening to something we will never hear. This is where the story becomes hardest to believe, and where science continues its most heated debate. Do elephants hold funerals in the true meaning of that word, and not simply as a metaphor humans project onto animals? Cynthia Moss observed dozens of instances across decades in Amboseli where elephants would not leave the body of a family member for at least 1 to 2 days. During that time, herd members touched the body gently with trunks and feet focusing especially on the face and trunk of the fallen. Some individuals covered the body with leaves, soil, and branches in an act for which no interpretation other than covering exists. The offspring of the dead individual most often refused to leave the longest standing still and returning again and again over the days that followed. What surprised science most was not that this behavior exists, but that it continues long after any biological scent or decay signal has disappeared. Elephants return to the sites where family members died sometimes years later and repeat the same touching and standing behavior. Researcher Karen McComb observed a herd detour significantly from their regular route, specifically to visit such a site. Science has not fully agreed on elephant consciousness of death, but the behavioral evidence grows increasingly difficult to dismiss. There is a question science has not yet answered: do elephants have any concept of their own mortality? Researchers have documented cases of very old elephants walking toward water, lying down, and dying in locations somewhat removed from the herd. No one knows for certain why. Is it a conscious choice, or simply the random wandering of a body approaching its end? And here is a paradox: elephants fear the place where family members died, yet are simultaneously drawn back to it in a pull they cannot resist. It is the same paradox humans live when we return to gravesides, knowing grief waits there, yet feeling compelled to go. Researchers divide into two camps, one seeing evidence of death awareness, analogous to humans, the other attributing it to deeply learned behavior with no metaphysical content. Both camps agree on one point: this behavior is unlike anything documented in any other non-human species on Earth. Chimpanzees, cetaceans, and ravens also show grieving behaviors, but none return to death sites years later the way elephants do. The hardest thing to explain is that elephant behavior, it remains, is not driven by the smell of decay, nor by predator presence, nor by any known survival trigger. The only remaining explanation is this: they remember. And memory alone is reason enough to stop. And this opens the largest question of the entire story. If elephants remember like this, what exactly is the poaching crisis erasing? The 20th century killed more than 70% of all African elephants, most of them for ivory. In the 1980s, up to 100 African elephants were killed every single day across the continent for their ivory. What few people recognized was that each elephant killed was not only one individual gone, it was an entire library of memory permanently erased. When a matriarch is killed, the herd loses its memory of water sources, familiar dangers, and migration routes proven across many drought seasons. Studies from Kenya and Zimbabwe show that herds that lost their matriarch survived drought years at significantly lower rates than intact structure herds. There is another consequence, less often discussed, but no less serious: herds that lose their adults show measurable collective psychological trauma. Young elephants that lose their mothers or matriarchs show significantly higher rates of aggression toward other species and toward humans. In Pilanesberg National Park in South Africa, orphaned elephants relocated without adult companions killed white rhinos, a behavior never recorded before that intervention. When older bulls were introduced to the group, the behavior stopped entirely. Young elephants need elders to learn how to be elephants. This confirmed that elephant social behavior is not primarily instinct, it is largely learned knowledge, passed from individual to individual across time. And so when the ivory crisis shatters family structure, it does not only take lives, it erases entire generations of collective knowledge. But this story is not only about loss. In recent decades, science has discovered what elephants may be able to teach us in return. Research into elephant infrasound directly inspired early seismic warning systems and remote forest monitoring technology now used across multiple conservation programs. Elephant spatial memory of water routes has been used to map hidden underground water sources that satellite technology failed to detect. Elephant seismic language is being studied to develop early warning technology for detecting poacher activity inside protected reserves. Elephants are, slowly and without intention, teaching us how to listen to something we never knew existed. Perhaps what we need most right now is not more answers about elephants, but more questions about ourselves. Elephants have memory, hidden language, and funeral ceremony. And we, the species that believed these things were ours alone, are quietly being asked to reconsider. The distance between us and elephants is far shorter than we have ever been comfortable believing. And that does not diminish the wonder of elephants, it deepens our responsibility toward them. Every living elephant is a moving archive of memory, a breathing library, and we have not yet read a single page of it. And when that elephant finally walks away from the bones of the one it loved, it never truly leaves. It carries the memory forward through every dry season, every migration, across the rest of its entire life. And perhaps that is the most astonishing thing in this entire story. Memory does not need a human brain to be real. The earth has given memory more than one shape, and the elephant is living proof of that truth. Somewhere right now, on the African savanna, an elephant is standing beside the bones of someone it once knew, and it will not leave, not because it cannot, but because it knows something it has no words to say. The question is not whether elephants understand death. The question is whether we are humble enough to admit that we do not fully understand it either.